Happy Giving Tuesday. For this Giving Tuesday, I'd like to share with you an audio file of one of my recent Dave Thin Method Unmounted classes for riders. If you enjoy the class, please consider donating to the charity of your choice. The class was held in the picturesque stables of Our Town Dressage in Morris, Connecticut. The stable even boasts a complete gym. Through a group discussion, we found out that for the whole group, 3 items were of interest. The first one being symmetry, whether they could really know whether they were collapsing to the left or to the right, how to stop that. They also wanted to know, really, where is their middle? Are they actually where they think they are? The second topic of interest was, how supple are they in their back? Some of them felt that they were a little bit stiff in their back or discomfort, possibly. And many of them just wanted to swing better with their horses while they ride, or not be stiff the day after. In the same way, suppleness in the hips was an item that everyone was interested in, and they wanted to have this long, relaxed leg and not end up suffering the next day in their hips because they rode. Before we get to our audio recording of the class, here's a photo of a group unmounted class at Aspire Farm. Here you see the riders are doing what's called a body scan. The body scan in this case is done laying down. Other body scans can be done sitting down in a chair or standing up. When you get good at it, you can even do it on your horse. One of the things we hope to achieve doing a scan is to get a baseline, to find out where our middle is, where our body lies today, and where does it go to, tracking the changes throughout the lesson. Remember to move slowly, don't stretch yourself past your limits, and only do what's available, trying to notice what's easy, what's comfortable, and look after yourself with breaks whenever necessary. So whenever you're ready, take your eyes away from the screen, find yourself a mat and a place to lay down, ideally on the ground, something firm so that you can sense your body on the mat. So we use the ground somewhat like a mirror. By that I mean we try to check, how am I laying on the ground? What is actually touching? What's not touching? Where is my midline? And if you need to keep your knees bent, that's a good choice. So anything that's better for you and more comfortable, please make that decision. And at any time, if there's something that you don't feel like doing, or you drift off and fall asleep, that's okay. By that I mean, this is really your time. There's no right, there's no wrong. Just be comfortable and take your time with everything, be easy. We're not trying to fix anything. If you find yourself that you're crooked or rotated or short on one side, long, whatever it is, just take note. How's the contact with the back of your head? The head is a little bit like a ball. Is it rolled a little bit to the left or to the right? And another similar question, if you were to get up and roll to one side, what side would that be? Now that you know that answer, try to sense your body to see if there is a little bit of that already happening in your body. Maybe, maybe not. Noticing your limbs, comparing the length of one limb to the other. Comparing, where does my right foot point to in this room? Or if you have your knees bent, your foot and knee. And what does my left one do? Does this pattern continue up into my hips? Do I have one glute that feels bigger or heavier? And try to create this map of yourself once you feel these small sensations. If you do notice something, that's great. If you don't, that's also fine. The pelvis in general, whatever it is that you know about the pelvis and the skeleton, try to fill in those blanks as if you were to draw this. What does the right hip joint do? What does the left hip joint do? And if you need to use your fingers to palpate, that's totally fine. What's the top of the pelvis on the right side doing? What's the top of it doing on the left? What do you feel or think that your seat bones are doing? How's the contact with the lower back in general? And do you feel your sacrum? What areas of your back take bigger contact or heavier? And what areas give you a bit of a hollow in your back? Is there room for a little mouse to pass underneath? And is it different on the left and on the right side of your waistline? Moving up, do you sense your shoulder blades? And let's try to get a general feeling of what your arms do coming out of your body. Would they hang or would they want to go up? Is one going up to one ear? And what's the distance like from your right ear to your right shoulder? Vice versa. Now, if you were on a horse, how would this be to be this aligned without working? Obviously, we have the ground underneath us for support right now, and that's what allows us to let go of any muscular tension or support to do this. So what we're interested in is what would a totally relaxed body be, thinking about skeletal structure. When you're standing, the support then comes through your feet, into your legs, and the weight of everything else is transmitted down to that, the support, right? So if you break down the word of this, supo, to be held from underneath. So you don't have this when you're on the horse, you can think about this, but then remember that your support is your pelvis. And because we're not standing, we're not really sitting, there is a little bit into the legs, but not much. The support is really the pelvis, and everything above it is structured so that it takes weight into the pelvis, into the saddle, now into your forelegs, as opposed to having two legs and trying to stand on them, because that wouldn't give you the correct feeling of a long, relaxed leg that many of you have talked about. All right, so I'd like to invite everybody to roll their head very gently, a quarter of an inch to any side they choose, and slowly come back to the middle. And ask yourselves, was this the same side that you chose, that you thought about earlier? Once again, allowing your head to very gently roll to any side and back to the middle. Doing that a couple of times, noticing what's easy about it, what's comfortable about it. Are you breathing easily? What do your eyes want to do? If your eyes are closed, do you feel them moving? If they're open, are you looking at the ceiling, or do they move with your head? Possibly they go the other way. Rest for a moment and explore the opposite side. What was it about the initial side that you found easy that you could possibly borrow and transport to this side? If you're curious, you can pass through the midline and roll your head gently to the left and to the right. Trying to get a feel for where is the middle when I'm not rolled right and I'm not rolled left. We do have to pass through the midline. Rest for a moment. If you are doing this with your eyes closed, please try them open. And of course, if your eyes are open, try them closed. Once more, with a relaxed jaw, rolling of the head. And see if you're using neck muscles that you possibly don't need. So really giving the weight of your head to the ground and think rolling. You might ask, well, what could initiate this if I'm not allowed to or not supposed to use neck muscles? try thinking of your jaw going first. If you were a lizard, I know it sounds crazy with a long tongue, and the tongue pulls you first to that side. You can think of a pencil on your nose, extended to the ceiling. Or maybe you want to start it with your eyes. Try that. Each situation is a little bit different, but a piece of the same pattern. So most people would agree that there's about 90% of what's happening in our body that we're unaware of, that's on autopilot. And as riders, we have the task to know more about that 90% and about what's happening in our horse, and of course to figure out the relationships, how to influence this. So variations, experimenting, trying, as long as you know that you've tried, okay, I tried it first with my eyes. That was comfortable. Or the jaw thing worked. So whatever it is, and you'll figure it out in your riding. You can do flying changes by thinking of your imaginary tongue. You can think about this small little movement would initiate a rotation in the spine. So, if you were to now sense, how far down do you feel a rotation that continues, or a spiral? How many vertebrae do you feel this happening in? A little bit, as you roll your head. Do you sense that there's a possibility of one hip taking more contact with the ground as you roll your head? Is it the same side? Is it the opposite? Not to give you a right and wrong, but both are possible. Try it. Bring your head a little bit to one side and try to think rolling to that same side and see if you feel the glute, the hip, the leg open. Or you could try looking to one side and rotate the rest of the body, the rib cage, the pelvis, slightly to the other, only to feel a little more weight. So if you're on a horse going left, and you turn your shoulders to keep them with the horse's shoulders, and your head is right in the middle, not way to the left, you might be able to turn your whole body to the left. But now we have the issue that our inside seat bone is back, and the outside seat bone is forward. It is an issue if that's not what we want. It's fine if that's what we want. If you wanted to organize it so that you still sit inside, but you have your inside hip forward and your outside hip back, then you could try it by looking over your outside shoulder. So everyone try it to the left. As you look over your right shoulder, so we're coming to the right, think about being on a 10-meter circle to the left, or shoulder and left, and see how much of the residue of what you already do on autopilot kicks in. Does the left leg get longer? Do you feel that you want to put your inside rein forward and not pull on it? I don't know. This is all, we're trying to figure out what's unique to all of you. Come to the middle and rest for a moment. Thinking of your body much like a cylinder, in which direction is there any rolling, if there is? So we talked specifically about the head. If we now think about a torso, I have this roller here to help you think about the cylinder idea. So is there any rolling of the cylinder that represents your torso? Or would you have your chin, your sternum, your belly button all in one line without having any diagonal tendency to you? So middle, middle, middle. Please bring your left leg into a bent position so that your foot is on the ground, and leave your right leg long. Begin to press that left leg, the foot, into the ground very lightly, and release. As you do that, in which direction does the pelvis want to roll to? Is there any rocking to the right or the left? Try it several times, press into the ground. So now the ground forces come through your leg into your pelvis and would initiate a roll of the pelvis to the right. Notice what your right leg is doing. Could you allow that right leg to roll like a log slightly to the right, simultaneously allowing this push to allow your pelvis to roll? Another way of thinking about it, we lift the left glute very lightly off the ground, and we lower it back down. The glute, the hip. Thinking about your lower belly, I'm standing to the right of all of you. What if there was a string pulling on your belly button forward and down to the right of you? Could you follow that string and arch your back and expand your belly like a little baby, but really big to the right? So if you think of your lower right quadrant of your belly, bring it out and to the right, and then come back down. This time, trying again with the left leg only, and see if the whole picture is a little bit more clear. We talked about the glute, we talked about the hip on that same side, we talked about the pressure coming through your leg. We can be more specific about the bones, but that's enough. We talked about your belt buckle, I didn't say it specifically, but your belly button going to the right. Me pulling on a string forward and in this direction here. So you're presenting your belly button, if you had a flashlight on it, to the ground to the right, quite far out. Your right leg is rolling. What are your ribs doing? Is there any weight shift onto the right shoulder area? And how do you use your breath? Possibly you hold it, possibly you time it that you do this small little movement with the breathing, or it can be on its own rhythm. Try holding your breath. See how that helps you or it doesn't. Where does the stiffness show up? Possibly in the hips. Something just doesn't move anymore. Something gets a little stuck. And breathe normally, and possibly time the breathing. Breathing down towards your lower right abdomen as if it was going to fill with air. Expanding your belly. Really thinking little baby with a pot belly. Unfortunately, in this culture, or just about every culture, everyone wants to hold their abs in. What if I said, forget about the abs in idea, and let everything out, as if you've eaten too much and you've opened your belt. Welcome, come on in. Let's find a spot.
Sorry, we're late.
No, it's okay. I think there's a couple of spots there, and this room here also. So take a moment to rest and let your leg out and see if there's any difference that's happened in your initial scan. Any change in contact with the ground? Maybe, maybe not. Any pieces of your image that have become more clear if you had to draw this? And is there any residue of this rolling to the right? By residue, I mean inclination to roll to the right based on what we've just done. Please bring your right leg to standing, meaning bent, and leave your left leg long. And begin to press keeping your knee pointing straight ahead, so not letting your knee roll to your left. Press your right foot into the ground and see if any of that lesson has been transferred to the other side. Rolling your pelvis. So another way of talking about this is if you were sitting on a clock, we had previously been going to the right towards 3 o'clock, or I had you pointing your belly button towards 2 o'clock. What about going to your left, somewhere to 9 o'clock, maybe your belly button is pointing to 10 o'clock. How does that shift weight? So again, the size of the clock, regular clock like the one in the front of the room, and your pelvis just happens to fit right over it. And your pelvis is very much, again, like a ball. It will roll, and it actually continues to roll until something stops it. So once you press with your right foot, it should continue to roll until you say, that's enough, that's the end. And then you can let it roll back the other way. In some languages, the pelvis is called a bowl. Specifically, when you talk about forward and back rotation of the pelvis, you can spill the soup out of the bowl forward or to the left or the back. Right now, we're letting the soup spill forward down to the left, to the ground to your left. So if you want to send your eyes in that direction to help with the intention, and really push your belly out, and maybe try adding the rolling of the head. See what works better for you to get more movement of the pelvis rolling. Try with the head rolling in the same direction. Try in the opposite direction. So your knee pushes, your pelvis is rolling, your belly goes out to your left. So for most people, they're aiming their belly here or to the exit. Leaving your head down. And do what's natural. Please leave your hands on top of your ribs and let them slide and feel what's happening underneath you, what's happening in the ribs. So let's try now rolling the head in either the opposite or the same direction. And simultaneously start to push with that right knee rolling, leaving the belly out, and come back down. Once more to experiment, please hold your core, whatever that means to you. Be strong, be firm, and try it again. See if it helped you, or was it a bit similar to the experiment of holding your breath? Letting go, thinking jello and big belly, especially your lower belly. What happens if you try it like that? A string pulling on your belly button. And the movement being initiated by this imaginary string pulling on your belly button. See if that's easier to allow the log to roll on your left leg, the knee on the right to push forward. If there was a string on that right knee, what is it doing? Very nice. And come back to the middle, let your legs slide out in front. And now that we've played with this rolling of the pelvis and the spine, so when you do the head in one opposite direction, there's a twisting that occurs. But some of you are playing with it. Try to roll your pelvis a little bit to the right and to the left, somewhat like a dance. Just play with it. And remember, when it rolls, it rolls. It doesn't roll and stop. So you can roll it back and forth in a rhythm. And which side is easier? You can imagine imaginary strings again. One side of the pelvis lifting, the other lowering. What are the legs doing to help rock? What are the ribs doing? And slowly find your middle like we did with your head. And see if anything's changed with your perception of the middle and any rolling or turning in the cylinder that represents your body, the individual cylinders that represent your legs. So if the feet are pointing out, which is, I'm not prescribing it, is it a good thing or a bad thing, but it is generally an indication of loose hips. So if you notice that your left foot, for example, is more rolled to the left, that means your log on the left side is inclined to roll your whole pelvis to the left. Just that small detail. And if your right log is a little bit more stiff and pointing straight to the ceiling with your toes, you can all try that. So leave your left leg open and your toes more or less falling and pointing to this side of the room here on your left side. And your right leg pointing straight ahead. Your right knee straight ahead, meaning over your head. So not both legs turning to the right, to the left, sorry, and the right leg is staying straight. So this would be the beginning of if you wanted to roll and open. So we can think about the belly coming out to your left. You could think about allowing your leg to open and to, you could be riding and your whole left side just gets longer in that way. It's not specifically pushing in your left stirrup. You might actually push in your right stirrup to do that. Give that a try. Put your right leg into bent position. It's not exactly the same configuration. So your right leg is your now short stirrup, ultra short stirrup, and your left leg is without a stirrup. And you're letting your leg open to the inside. So you're doing a shoulder in and you don't want to clamp with that inside left leg, but you do want to turn your shoulders and your ribs to that left side, and you want to let go of your leg and let it be long. So we're just talking about rolling here and letting go. There is another function of getting the left side longer, which we'll get to in a minute. But this is just rolling. Come back to the middle. Let go of your leg. And try to see if one of your legs wants to be more open. And think about, does that correspond with what happens when you ride? And it's totally okay. It's not a problem. Very few people are exactly symmetrical. I've yet to meet one, actually. Very few horses don't need a very different ride to the left and to the right. And as riders, we're always trying to find our middles and recalibrate and help our horses find the same. And it's not so much about symmetry, but rather equal possibilities or equally good options and plans on the left and on the right, depending on whatever movement we want to do or what we want our horse to learn. Okay, please bring your both legs into standing once more and play with pressing and see what happens now that it's not one leg at a time. Where does this send you? Or does it actually indicate that you press with one leg more? So if you press with both and your pelvis rolls to one side or your knees drop to one side, there's another inkling that you're probably rolling your pelvis to one side or unevenly pushing, whether that's in your stirrup or when you walk on the ground, whether you press more with one leg. Now coming back to only the left leg, if we decide now that we just all of a sudden decide we don't want to use this pressure to roll the pelvis, what else could it be used for? What about if we aim to send the pressure towards our opposite shoulder? See if you can leave your pelvis quiet, and as you press in the left foot into the ground, can that pressure go towards your right shoulder? please extend your right arm overhead, leaving it on the ground if possible. If anyone needs a pillow or something, if they're uncomfortable, if it hurts in any way, please don't do it. There's blankets here. I see that I can give a few of you. I will come around with that. Anybody that has too much space underneath them, that right there, a bit more comfortable. There. Okay, I think that's good. Now pressing in we only have the left leg that we want to press into, so you can leave your right leg long if you want. So pressing with your left foot, see if you can extend your fingers towards the windows behind you. But coming from the pressure of the left leg. Try it a few times. There might be a little bit of rolling in the pelvis, but mostly we're trying to channel this energy as if a friend is just tugging on your fingers. So there's a lengthening and then a sliding or shrinking that happens. What happens in your breathing? Can you find a rhythm to that? Now the next time you try it, see if you can push your heel down towards the front of the room on the right leg. Yeah, very good. And can you simultaneously make your whole right side longer while thinking a side bending or folding through the ribs, or even collapsing if you want, on your left. Please bring your left arm on the ground to your side and slide those fingers towards your foot slightly. And see if you can feel that as you do that, your right leg wants to get long. And please roll your head to now look at the arm or the hand that's overhead. So turn your head and look towards your fingers. And in order to do that, there'll be a bit of a side translation of your head. As you roll it, you'll be bringing your head somewhere towards your left. Even though we're turning it to look right, how do we do this? That we shorten our left side. Maybe you have a water bucket on your left arm. You have a helium balloon pulling you up on your right arm. You can breathe up in towards the right chamber. Very nice. So the back of your head is going to come back to your left in order for you to turn. That's beautiful. So if anyone, we don't normally do a lot of demos, but we have two very good demos here, what to do with the head. And the back of the head, as you can see, it goes back to the right in order to bring the chin long and to look towards the right. So the chin comes up, and we look up towards the right, and we're finding a diagonal connection from the left foot into the right arm. When you're riding, that might just be, it could come from your stirrup. It might just be when the horse goes into a stance phase that you get that push into your left seat bone. And there's this pressure that goes in a rhythm towards your opposite shoulder. And come back to the middle. Let's focus now on the side bending and the shortening of your left side. So really shortening, bringing your shoulder and your hip closer together on the right side in a comfortable, easy way. And is it possible to slightly shorten or collapse
slightly, softly, without labeling it as collapsing or something bad. Because we need our ribs to be flexible. And in order to lengthen, for example, you're doing a half pass right, this would be a similar feeling that you're reaching up into your right arm, your right stirrup is long, your left is behind you, your belly is coming over to your right slightly. You could turn your shoulders as needed to help the horse's shoulders. So all of this is possible, and your feeling of being able to raise your right side and be very upright. It's not that you don't bend and shorten on the left. And maybe you get pressure coming from the left leg to fuel that length and push and radiating yourself and the horse towards your right. So shortening the left, and you can have various situations that your head can turn to look to the right or not. You can feel your ribs turn. We talked about the cylinder earlier. So we're combining the cylinder idea with a more two-dimensional idea of one side shortens and one side lengthens. But we should always think three dimensions. Using your breath, using the belly button, the string, all these ideas from earlier. And see if pushing down in your right leg causes some kind of tension. Leave it be. Let it become long. Just like we did on the other side when we allowed that leg, which was the imaginary inside stirrup, to be long. Just leave it be. If it happens to lengthen because of shortening on the left, and the push from your left leg, the force goes into your pelvis slightly, so you can combine a slight rolling of the pelvis with pressure all the way to the right arm. Come back to the middle, completely rest. Let your legs out in front of you, your arms to your sides. And see if you feel any residue of this. Do you feel longer on your right side? More ready to look beautiful in the saddle, traveling right? Would you roll or turn to the right or the left? These are all just ideas to figure out where your middle is and which side is long, which side is short. Now try to feel which leg do you sense being longer? Which arm do you feel longer? And if the one you feel shorter, is it short because the shoulder is up? What are the ribs doing? The distance from the top of the pelvis to your armpit on the left and the right. Just like we found our middle earlier with the rolling of the head or the cylinder, can we play with very softly just in your ribs now and in your sternum, allowing for one side to become longer. You can breathe like we did up towards the right corner of our chest. The belly might go a bit to the right, and you can imagine, now only imagining, bringing your right arm up like we just did, and allowing this concept or idea of a helium balloon going up to your right. The pressure in your mind only from the left leg, and gentle shortening and folding on your left side. You might sense your sternum as a wheel that turns in this. And how about now if we turn it in the opposite direction and imagine doing the same thing in the opposite direction. So the right foot or the right stirrup pushes and your pelvis rolls to the left. So sometimes people get confused with right and left. So I'm on your right. So you press from the right, going towards your left in your mind. If you're not able to find it, you can bring your right leg up to standing to help you feel the pattern a little bit more clearly. But we're trying as best possible to only imagine. And you'll notice if you listen, and I use the word listen because you're listening to your own movement. Is there a little bit of that happens only by imagining? Because the theory is this: you can't imagine a movement without actually doing it at some micro level. And if we're looking for subtlety in our horses, having control of that and all these little patterns would make the world of difference in, you name it, half passes, shoulder ins, flying changes, pirouettes, or horse that moves unevenly into piaffe or passage. Or in something difficult like the ones, that one change is really big and one is not. Or something very simple, just to be satisfied that you're in the best place that you can be on your horse, to not create any crookedness or patterns for your horse, for yourself. Once more, go back to rolling of the head that we did in the beginning. And see how it is now. Do you now possibly feel something a little bit further down, either in the ribs? You might think that, oh, I might be imagining this, but I just sensed several vertebrae that I didn't know that I could keep track of. One vertebrae at a time will turn. It's genius, our bodies are. The weight will shift, equal and opposite. You can use breath to fuel the turning. It doesn't have to come from a push. You can use your eyes, your imagination of your jaw. Or you can be more direct and have a push that comes through your body, from the foot, from the seat bone. And allowing yourself to receive this push or these information that passes through you is only possible when you're not holding your breath and you're not stuck with this idea that you have to hold your core strongly. Because people's concept of core is really varying. Most people think it's just abdominal muscles. So you can do some research on your own, but the basic idea is if you use your abdominal muscles too much, what are they for? They're for folding, for sit-ups, for chopping wood. So then you think, oh, I don't want to look like I'm doing sit-ups or folding forward when I'm riding. So what if we talked about the front of your body being for flexing or shortening, and the back muscles being your extensors? These are the anti-gravity muscles. So in standing, how you don't fall down or whatever it is, you're pushing against, the pressure comes through your legs, and you use your back. So your back is the one that you want to be using, and you have to use your core, the normal idea of core, in a soft way, a rhythmical way. You're also playing with your back, nothing stiff. And then a neutral place is that there's a resting position of your front and your back. And that, of course, when you turn your body, you might be using abdominals on the lower left, if you turn your body left, and your back more on the right. So it's not static like that. Please bring your legs to a bent position. And this time, press your left foot into the ground and direct the pressure to your head. And see if there's a response in your head. Is something happening in your chin? Can you make yourself taller by this, like a string is pulling on the back of your head, your hair? And as you release it, is it like a turtle, its shell, or its head going back into its shell? Let's see if we can create a longer spine and neck. And as you release, there's a shortening or sliding down back to the front of the room. So I'm going to go around and just give a little push on some of your knees to give you an idea. That's okay. and then there's pull forward. So for the pull forward, you might imagine that the knee, see what the knee is doing. So that's the pull back, and then you push, sending your knee away from your body slightly towards the front of the room. And as you let go, really nice. See if you can use your breathing. Notice what's happening on the back of the head. Just very lightly thinking about the knee here, and if there's a strain. And how do we create this push to make the head move away? If you're not finding it, I can give you another tip how to find it. Please take both of your hands on top of your head, interlace your fingers, and try to scrunch your head down, sort of to make yourself scrunched feeling. Now resist that with your left leg and try to break through that barrier. So you create a resistance from your own arms, scrunch yourself, and now push to make yourself taller from the left leg, through that barrier created by your hands. So you can do this when you're riding. If you place your hands on your helmet and you try to push your helmet down onto your body, and now you say, no, I want my spine to be longer. So what I'm looking for is that how do we find length in the neck area, the sternum, this tall look that we're getting, without it being artificial. By artificial, I mean that it's not coming from the pelvis, it's not coming from the ground forces. So you can leave your arms to your side again, and press again without the constraint, and see if your head moves a bit. Just to help you, there we go, and opposite way. There we go. So if you were on a trampoline, you would feel it a little bit more as a spring, but there would be a back and an up. Try the opposite leg. So we're just seeing how we can use the same pressure that either would roll the pelvis, would allow us to become longer on the opposite arm, or maybe we just send it straight up the spine to make ourselves longer and shorter, and the spine flexible and available to lengthen and shorten in an elastic way. And while doing this, we are using our hips, we are using our breathing. Take a moment to rest. Do another scan with your legs bent. From this type of scan, where are our knees pointing? What's my belt buckle doing? Does it come back towards my middle, meaning do I have a lot of contact on the lower back? Or does my belt buckle point to the front of the room? So we're coming back to the pelvic clock. This time we're going to play with 12 and 6. So rolling your pelvis forward towards the room. It's our bowl of soup. We're spilling the soup forward towards the ground in front of us, giving room for a little mouse to pass under our back. And then we roll it back the opposite way. So many ways to describe this, but it happens that the pelvis is rolling forward, there's a flashlight on you, back to the string, it all comes forward towards the front of the room, and then you bring your belly button down, not like a Pilates class, but it just comes from your tailbone. So follow your tailbone. What does a tailbone do in order for the pelvis to rock? And hopefully you feel some kind of response in your head. If it's not happening, it's not plugged in, it's okay. And you just stay with the localized. And can you use your feet to help you to do this? We use our feet. When do you press into the ground? What does that help you do? Flatten your back or arch your back? And do you roll your pelvis clearly to the middle, 12 and 6, or does it go something like 11 and 5? What is your preference? Please place your legs to your left, slide your feet, Slide your feet and continue as if your legs are still in your middle, and try this. So if it feels totally foreign to you, then probably the left side is not your normal short side. So you're pressing, pretending that your legs are in front of you, but they're not. You're doing like a side sitting almost. Can you push all the way to your head? Can you move your head away and then back down? The pelvis, right now the left hip is in a different position. Now try it on the opposite side. Slide your feet equally away from your midline and try again. Maybe this is more familiar. Short on the right, long on the left. Turn to the right. And now this time, come back to the middle. Press through your feet and release slowly, and notice what happens with your neck and your spine. And release slowly. Is it more clear through your whole spine? So the solution to this was actually creating some confusion, and we should have a bit more of a clear spring available by pressing. Can you all try to do a sitting trot as you're there? So find your rhythm and create a spring. If you want a passage, that's okay as well. Yeah, and find a little bit more of an active trot. Play with a different rhythm, a little bit quicker, maybe extended trot. Yeah, letting your belly button go forward and down, your back is supple and flexible, your belly is not locked. Try with a locked belly again and see if that changes the way you sit. And how do you make yourself spring higher? Do you want it to be on a trampoline? And maybe some of you have really big moving horses that throw you up into the air. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it's the moment of suspension. And how do you bring that movement into your body and then go back into the horse? And can you make it a diagonal pressure, meaning it's the left hind leg going towards the horse's right fore. So a trot is diagonal in nature. So pressing with your left foot to your right shoulder, vice versa. So that's one dimension. There is still the 12 and the 6 that's happening as well. And there is a slight shortening and lengthening happening because of when you're on a four-legged animal, that's actually what's happening. The left hind leg comes forward in the trot. Let's go back to a circle left so you can play with your sitting trot while we talk about this. Shoulder in or a circle left. The horse's left hind leg comes forward and the whole left side drops. We sometimes think that we get a bump in our right seat bone and that means the right hind leg is coming forward. In reality, that's when the right hind leg is taking weight. So it's the left hind leg is in its movement phase when the left seat bone should drop down. The saddle will roll slightly to the left on that side because the barrel of the horse goes up and to the right. This, however, doesn't mean that we don't stay long. So it's actually like an imaginary elevator on your left side goes down, but you stay long on that side. Okay, I won't make it more complicated than that. So play with shoulder and left while you do your sitting trot spring, and then you go back to your middle to be not turned at all. You're on the center line, not even in shoulder fore. There's no right, there's no left. And then shoulder fore to the right while you do your trot. And see what's happening, how you can move through this easily. Let your legs out in front of you again. And please do your last scan, noticing what changes might have taken place during this class. How's your breathing? How's your general level of comfort, relaxation, relief that this wasn't some scary class? Or ideas maybe of, I didn't know that about myself, or my self-image, or what I thought about how I should become taller, or use my core, or my abs. And how is it to feel let go of your muscles? You're now just the skeleton that's being moved by your breath. And do you sense in your breathing there's a bit of a 12 and 6 possible still happening like a wave? A lengthening and shortening of your spine? Maybe, maybe not. But it's all there. Please do your comfortable roll to any side to slowly come to sitting. And bring yourselves to standing. So, how is it now to be in space and to really inhabit your own body? Can you sense any of the things we covered? We talked about turning, rotating, finding your middle through that. We did some shortening and lengthening. We did some diagonal pressure. We did diagonal pressure combined with rotating, and really just coming back to your middle, finding length, coming through the skeleton, not me just saying, well, I'm slouched, so I should now lock myself there. So the difference would be is that I'm connecting like a wave from the pressure of my legs. But what does my pelvis do to propel that? So if I go the opposite way, my pelvis comes like this, then I'm going to be slouched. If I want to be slouched and sit up at the same time, it's that feeling of being on a horse and falling in a hole and trying to get out of it. So this is why I'm not saying that the pelvis should be tipped forward, because then you might be on your crotch and have your legs too far back. And what I'm saying is really, how do you find your middle? Your bowl of soup is not tipped in any way or turned. And now you can control the forward and the back of the pelvis. You can add spring to it. You can have diagonal connection. So you have your 3 dimensions. So thinking of the clock again, you have your 12 and your 6, you have your 3 and your 9, and you have your 10 and your 2, which you mostly feel in walk. Or you might play with that in, so you'll feel your 10 and your 2 very clearly in walk. But there is a little bit of that in trot as well because of the diagonal nature. And even though we make it look like we're tall, because what's happening underneath us, the barrel goes like this, there is going to be one side of you that goes down, but you're still long on it. And then you're shortened on the opposite side in order for that to happen. And then it happens. Whoops, back to the other side, shortened on this side, but you don't make it obvious. So it looks like the person is totally square the whole time. But what's underneath them is moving, and you get pressure through you to your head. Any questions?
You look taller.
Sorry?
You look taller.
I look taller, yes. I participated with all of you. Well, look around, look at your friends, see what you think about how they're standing, how they're feeling. Go for a walk. See how your feet feel, your legs feel.
I feel disoriented.
This is common.